Welcome to Chapter 6 for Stress Management. For the Exercise Science and Sports Medicine students, we are going to look at thinking and choosing. Let's get started. All right, so thinking and choosing. So cognitive thinking techniques can transform stress-producing thought patterns into thought patterns that actually prevent disease. Right, so when you're trying to understand this concept, there's normal reactions you may have had in the past that actually exacerbate the stress or enhance the stress in your life. Because again, remember, there's a stressor, and again, I'm using some words interchangeably that I probably shouldn't, but I'm trying to talk in terms of, how we speak and you understand. But there's a stressor, and then there's our our reaction to stress, or how we view or perceive stress, right? And so there may be something that tends to set you off, so to speak. All right. And so again, if you've dealt with something over and over time, hopefully there's been an adaptation to where that stress is not as stressful each time it happens. Like if the same thing keeps breaking, but you've been able to fix it in the past, you should be able to think, okay, yes, this is broken again, but yes, I know how to fix it. Right. And so hopefully that should transform your thinking patterns into what that stressor is. And eventually, instead of it really raising your stress, should be one of those things, oh, hey, this isn't working. Okay, I just need to do this, get it back working, right? And not really raise your stress levels. Okay, but that doesn't always happen. And again, I'm picking something that might be very, simple, and thinking like you have some common little issue at your home or in your car, or something that just requires a little bit of tinkering. Sometimes there's other things that are, much greater magnitude, but again, if you've been through them, or if you can change your thinking pattern, you can have a much different stress reaction and better outcome. Okay. Cognitive distortion, we talked about this in the last chapter, occurs when thoughts are magnified out of proportion to the seriousness, resulting in excess stress to what's actually going on, right? So this would be, you know, for a most exaggerated example, you get a paper cut on your finger, you think you're going to die, you call 911, right? It's not that serious of a wound, right? Although some people really react to paper cuts pretty bad, but again, very distorted reaction to that type of stress. Okay. Um, Again, I talked about this one yesterday, but teenagers' reaction to getting broken up with, by their boyfriend or girlfriend, and screaming and yelling and crying that their life is over. They don't know how they're going to go on, right? Again, it's an all or nothing thinking, right? They're not thinking about, hey, maybe this isn't the right person, or hey, maybe this isn't the right time for this relationship. Things may change in the future. Maybe, we're not mature enough to have this type of relationship, whatever it is, all or nothing. It's like, if I can't be with this person, I can't be with anybody. I can't go on, right? You personalize something that doesn't need to be personalized. Okay. You take something, just to the extreme. I mean, for example, in our culture of fitness and nutrition, people now identify themselves as their diet, right? There's this weird occurrence now where people identify themselves with their diet. And so they, if you don't feel that the ketogenic diet is the best, oh man, they lose their mind. That's stressful. It's now something that they got to go off about, they yell about, or they're vegan. If you're not vegan, then what's wrong with you? I'm vegan. You need to be vegan. We all got to be vegan. They personalize something, they stress about it. If I'm vegan, nobody else is vegan, this whole world's going to fall apart. And they cognitive distortion. They discount the positive. This is probably one of the things, um, most of us do when we just got a lot of negative going on, right? You know, sometimes it's hard to see the flower in the middle of a burning field. Okay. Um, you know, when you've got a lot of stress and a lot of things in your life that just seem negative, you know, it's hard to be like, you know, but yeah, but this happened, you know, but this happened, but, you know, and these were good things, right? And assuming the worst, right? The Eeyore syndrome, you know, like no matter what, everything is bad. Even when things are not bad, everything is bad, right? Oh, if it's good now, it's going to get bad again tomorrow. Like they're always looking at the negativity that's around, or trying to find negativity even when there's none around. Um, Focus on cognitive distortions and relearning thought processes as a way to alter negative emotions, raise self-esteem, gain hope for the future. This is cognitive therapy, right? Um, so what we got to do is take our distortions, you know, so things that tend to set us off, that really have no place in what they do. You know, again, so take the teenager who got broken up with, for example. Okay. um, you know, realize that, hey, yes, this is not a fun time to be going through. They may have had like really serious feelings for that person. But again, what good can come about from this? You know, maybe they were spending a lot of time with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and now they have more free time to spend with their friends. You know, they were actually not going to go on a vacation with their family or their friends because of the you know, the relationship. Now they are now free to go on that, right? So they're looking at some positives, you know, and really looking at the emotions to this, you know, and trying to feel better about now what does their future entail, right? Raise their self-esteem. Okay. Again, don't look at it as, again, same scenario. You know, what's wrong with me? I'm worthless. That's why they left me, so on and so forth. But, you know, understanding who you are, taking that to heart, and realizing that, you know, hey, just wasn't the right fit, right? Nothing wrong with me, just wasn't the right fit. And again, now that you're free, there's someone better out there for you. You know, now you can start thinking about, what were the things in this relationship that I really, you know, like I was overlooking because I just had these emotions for this person. And now what can I set as goals of, you know, like this really did bother me. I'd like to find somebody that, you know, doesn't do this, or I'd like to find somebody that has this personality trait, or, you know, things like that. You know, these are all things that you can do. Now, sometimes in the moment it's hard to do, but doesn't mean, you know, it may take a little bit of time, but again, you can learn to relieve that. And again, as you know, somebody that's matured from being a teenager through their 20s, 30s, if they've been dating for a while, they may be able to do this at the end of each breakup and have much shorter turnaround times and things like that. um, Again, believing what you're told. In a study of parent-child interactions over several days, researchers found that on average, there were 400 negative comments for every positive one spoken to each child. And again, this is a problem. You know, as parents, sometimes, you know, and I see this in work too. You know, and again, depending on how you are as an adult and how you deal with things, I guess this could be an issue. But you know, a lot of times when things are going good, you know, adults, especially speaking to kids, they just forget to be like, hey, you know, great job, good job, thanks for, you know, doing the dishes, you know, cleaning your rooms, things like that. You know, but as soon as they step out of line, we want to correct and say, no, you can't do that, you know, please help out, don't make a mess, don't drop that, don't, you know, don't, right? um, and again, it's easy to get into that trap, right? And children, when they hear no, 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 don't, you do this, you do that, this is wrong, that's wrong, that's all they hear, they start to create some negative thought processes, right? So again, this is talking about as an adult speaking to a child, make sure to praise as much, hopefully more than correct, right? So when they're doing right, and again, it's the same thing when someone tells you you're doing right, you continue wanting to hear that, right? So you want to continue to do right. So when someone says, "Oh, that's so nice that you cleaned that up. That was awesome. Great job. Hey, good job, buddy. You got that made. You did this. You did that." Kids will pick up on that, and they want to continue to get that type of feedback, right? Now, as an adult, we have to learn to adapt to our environments, right? And so again, you may work at a job where they celebrate everything. You do any little thing, they send you a reward, they have a little party. I kind of think of The Office when I look at this. It seems like they had parties all the time there. Other jobs, it's the only time you'll hear from a supervisor is when you mess something up, right? Again, as an adult, you need to be able to cognitively think that, look, if my boss doesn't ever talk to me, that's a good thing, right? It's one of those things. In my in my careers, I've had more workplaces like that where it's the only time you hear from the boss is when something's gone awry, right? And so again, you got to look at the positive of, if I'm not having it, and again, I'm not saying you can't have like some, like more of a personal interaction with your boss, like, hey, how's life and all that. But if they're not talking to you about work, that's a good thing. That means you're doing good. Keep it up, right? If you don't hear, that's a good thing, right? So if you don't hear anything from them, that's a good thing, right? So thinking errors. Albert Ellis identified 12 irrational ideas or thinking errors that people have. So the first is, I must be loved by everyone and everyone must approve of everything I do. I know many people that have this one. Again, go back to The Office. This is Michael Scott to a T. He just wants everyone to like him, right? And again, it's never going to happen, right? You can't be a people pleaser, and you can't please everybody. Because if you're pleasing, the thing is, think about this. There are people that are complete opposites. People think different. I mean, let's look at this from a political standpoint, right? You've got Republicans and Democrats. If you please all the Democrats, there's definitely Republicans will not be pleased. If you do something to please all Republicans, they're definitely Democrats that will not be pleased, right? You seem to have people that, these are two extremes where you have some folks that are just at odds for their political choices. Sometimes they don't even realize why they're at odds. Okay. You can't be loved by everybody, and people will not always approve of everything you do, right? Certain acts are awful or wicked, and people who perform such acts should be severely punished. Again, there are certain things by societal means we have deemed to be wicked and awful. There are certain things that by your own admission you've deemed these things, and you want them to be severely punished. So again, I think more than likely what this is really looking at is like, think about two siblings, right? So you grow up in a household and your brother or sister takes your ball. It's like, well, that's your ball. You feel like this is a very awful, wicked act. And again, I remember being a kid, and as a kid, you want justice, right? And you want your parents to come down like with the full force of the law upon that sibling of yours. Like, they took my ball, I want them grounded for the next month. I want them to have to come in and clean my room, bring me my food. Like, that was wrong, right? And you look at it that way, but again, you forget what you did to them the day before. And when somebody reminds you, you're like, but that's not that bad, I deserve grace, right? And again, there's definitely some, there might be some thought process in that one that's not completely off base, but there's definitely folks that like when something happens to them, they want justice from other folks. And again, it's a thinking error, right? You always got to think, where I need grace, where I need somebody to give me a second chance, again, should be extended to other folks that do things towards me as well, and so there's times where justice must be served, and there's times where grace needs to be enacted, right? It is horrible when things are not the way I like them to be. Well, if you are God, that may be true. But if you're listening to this, you are not God, therefore that is not true, right? So again, we're never all going to be happy with the way things are, and especially all the time, right? It's one of those things that, living here in South Florida, weather in the winter is amazing, right? You get in the 70s, it's not too hot, it's not too cold. It rains just a bit, but again, maybe it's not raining enough. So then you got to go out and water your plants and stuff. Oh, it's raining too much. You don't want to go outside and go do this or go do that. Yeah. I mean, nothing's ever always going to be the way that you like them to be. Right. And this world is not meant, you have these people that think they're the center of the world, center of the universe, and that we revolve around them. And that's not true. We're on a planet that revolves around a sun, right? So, we don't even revolve around just this world itself, but we revolve around a sun and a whole solar system. So what does that mean? We adapt to the world around us. We don't try to make the world around us adapt to us. And it's not horrible. It just feels horrible to you. And again, the more adaptable you are, the less horrible that feels, right? So when you're somebody just like, hey, these are things going on, this is how the world works, these are things that can happen, I can make my adjustments. Human misery and unhappiness are always externally caused and are forced on me by outside people and events. my reaction to that one is boo-hoo, boo-hoo, victim mentality, right? Again, sometimes people are going to do something awful to you. That is true. Okay. Whether you are miserable and unhappy is up to you. Okay. Somebody steals your car. That sucks. Can you get a new car? Can you call your insurance, let them know what's going on? Though, again, maybe you won't get, all your money back. I mean, things may not work out great, but you'll probably end up backing in a car again, right? And again, it's, somebody steals, your purse or your wallet or what, there's some things in there can be replaced, some things that can't. Okay. But it's up to you whether you move on from the things that can't be replaced and look to all the other things going on, right? And not letting that one person ruin your day or ruin your week or month or year or life, right? And again, that there are folks that are going to be constant irritators in your life, but it's up to you whether or not you allow them to irritate you, one, and two, if you're going to allow them to be part of your life, how much you're going to allow that irritation to unfold inside of you, right? So again, misery and unhappiness comes from the inside, but yes, people do cause events that are things that you don't like, right? So think about that. If something is or may be dangerous or fearsome, I should be terribly upset and endlessly obsess about it. Again, don't live here in Florida because every summer is hurricane season. I mean, so you can be upset and endlessly obsessed about the fact that the Cat 5 might be coming this year and heading straight for South Florida. Right? So you can spend all this time being stressed out and worried, and then it could come and go and pass like it has, or we could have another, Hurricane Irma is the only one I've been in. We could have, something much bigger like in Wilma or Andrew or something like that. And we might not, you can't, you can fear and obsess about it, but it doesn't make it go away if it's coming. And two, it doesn't, I mean, you just wasted all that time when something doesn't come, and you wasted all that time when something does come, right? So why? You know, if something happens, like we get reports when it's coming, you make your preps, right? You make preparations in case you're going to stay, you make preparations in case you're going to go, and you work with it. Okay. It is easier to avoid difficulties and responsibilities in life than to face them. Absolutely, it's just stupid. I'm going to say it. There's some things that you just can't avoid. I mean, difficulties come. If you don't have difficulties, you are living in a basement. You're one of these 30 something 40 something year olds whose parents allow you to live in the basement. They don't ever expect you to grow up, get a job, have relationships, anything like that. You sit alone down there playing video games, and mom comes and brings you your dinner, right? Not going to happen. And responsibilities, as you grow up, you have more and more responsibilities. You get married, you're responsible for another person and helping to take care of them. You have kids, you're responsible for them. You have a job, you're responsible for your portion of what happens in that job. We always have more and more responsibilities, and there's no way to avoid them, right? You have to face them, and you have to work with them, adapt to the things, and change what you can change, and adapt to the things that cannot be changed, right? I absolutely need something or someone stronger or greater than me on whom I must rely to succeed. Again, some people have mentors in their lives that can fit that build a little bit. Some people don't. But in all aspects of it, when it comes down to who's got to get something done, it's always going to be you. You can have somebody stronger and greater than you that you can rely on. But when you're in school, guess who's taking the tests? When you're at a job, guess who goes to work? It's you. You got to take care of you, and you got to be the one that's doing these things and getting and succeeding in life, right? I should be thoroughly competent, intelligent, and achieving in all possible respects. This is one I probably struggle with. Man, when I don't know something, it bothers me, and again, I'm like, okay, I got to learn and research. And, the thing I've slowly realized over the years is you can be good at everything, or at least adequate at everything. And in doing so, you'll be great at nothing, right? Now, again, there's a balance to those two aspects. There's some folks that are so specialized and focused on something, and they are an expert. They can do that, but they fail at so many other aspects of their life, right? There are some folks that are so generally broad in the things that they can do that they just really can't succeed at one thing. There's a mix in between there where you can have many skills in many areas, yet be very technically sound in one area. Okay. And so, or technically sound in a few areas, and really have an expertise in those areas, and so on and so forth. So again, you can't be the end all be all to everything, right? Because something once strongly affected my life in the past and must determine my present and future behavior. The influence of the past cannot be overcome. If that were true, then, basically half the great stories we ever hear from athletes that have come from, like really bad home family lives, none of them would ever made it as professional athletes, right? Folks that you hear give some of these valedictorian speeches that, again, same thing, they were abused, they lived in their car for a little while, they did, just rough past. If they never overcome those things, they would have never been a success at their school and become valedictorian. That's the thing. Now, again, there are some things that are hard for folks to overcome, but it doesn't, and again, they may have struggled with things and absolutely, failed many times to overcome things, but it doesn't mean that for the rest of their life, they will always fail. Right. And so there's, the thing is, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. Right. And so when you have that attitude, like, okay, if I get knocked down 9 times, I've just got to get up 10. You know, that's what it is. I must have a certain perfect control over things. You know, the one thing you always have control over is you. Outside of that, it just depends. You know, you know, that's the only thing you have 100% control over. Yes, you might be able to manipulate things at your work, people at your work, people in your life. You might be able to, you know, take it a step down from manipulation, but influence things. You know, you might have be able to take another step down, contribute to things, so on and so forth. But the only thing that you have perfect control over is you, and it's your actions and reactions to things that happen around you that you may not have control over, or you have, you know, some things you may have some control over, some things you may have zero control over. Human happiness can be achieved by inertia and inaction. um, you know, inertia is, you know, moving, and inaction is doing nothing. So I'm not really sure what they're, you know, inertia is the, you know, like a constant movement, right? So you know, a human happiness is going to be achieved through all kinds of aspects. And again, happiness is, you know, how you view your situations. You know, sometimes there's times where you got to sit still and be happy in doing so, or try to find happiness in doing so. So again, let's look at this year. You know, like at the first of the year, we're all going to work, we're going to school, we're doing whatever. You know, you've got plans for 2020. You know, maybe you're happy, like doing some fun stuff in January. Come March, everybody gets shut down, put in quarantine. You know, some people, you know, might have been completely miserable during that time. Other folks are like, well, shoot, you know, I'm doing work remotely, but you know, there's only so many things we can do remotely since it's not face to face. I'm gonna have some fun and binge watch a bunch of shows I didn't get to see, and they're happy about that, right? You know, I mean, they found a bright spot in that, or you know, they're like, hey, I'm gonna spend more time with my family. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna get a puppy, and if I don't have time to house train a, you know, I can get a puppy because now I'm home every day. I can house train them. You know, that there are things that, you know, you can do that, you know, can give you happiness, even, you know, whether you're moving forward, you're moving backwards, you're sitting, you know. There's times where I've had shoulder surgery or knee surgery, and again, there's parts of it that I'm not happy about, but you know, sometimes it's been nice because I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to give my body a rest. I'm going to, you know, especially like the first couple of days when I'm not allowed to go do something, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to lay in my bed and just relax, watch some things I haven't seen before or haven't seen in a long time, and just like take a break because I have to take a break, right? I have virtually no control over my emotions. Now, again, sometimes there are certain emotions you have that are very quick reaction, but again, you can learn to have more and more control over those. You know, again, the reason that people snap is because they've always snapped in the past, and they've allowed that pathway of always like something like this makes you get mad easy, this makes you cry easy, this makes you, and again, you can learn to have a slower reaction to things. You can learn to, like, when you feel that coming on, to take steps to diminish it, or to, you know, like maybe even not have any emotion at first at all. And again, you're not a victim and cannot do anything about the way you feel about things. Okay. So cognitive therapy for PTSD. Cognitive behavior therapy can be effective in treating phobias and obsessive compulsive disorder. Intensive cognitive behavior theory can also be effective for post-traumatic stress disorder. Can lead to improved PTSD symptoms over a shorter period of time and greater reduction of depression. Again, you know, some people, when they look at something like this, and if you were, you know, if you fall susceptible to any of the things in those two points, um, it's again, you got to look at, it's always a process, right? It's not a cure where it's like, okay, well, if you do this, you're not ever going to have these issues, or it's completely gone, don't got to think about it, type of thing. But it helps you to work on how you deal with things. And again, sometimes when you deal with things and you think about things differently, sometimes what's causing it sometimes diminishes. It may not ever go 100% gone, maybe it will. Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on a lot of things. And again, if it never does go 100% away, how do you deal with that? And how do you manage that, right? So cognitive techniques, one is positive self-talk. So if you're always telling yourself like, man, come on, stupid, quit doing that. Guess what? And you're going to have this negative value of yourself, especially when it comes to your intelligence. When you look in the mirror and you're like, hey, look at that fat guy. I mean, it affects your attitude towards, like your body. Again, if you're always yelling in your head about things, and you've got this idea, like you're just like always like, gosh, I'm so mad. And so guess what? It comes out, right? So again, negative self-talk is largely habitual, and you just got to, change the voice in your head, change the way you talk to yourself, change the way you look, again, it seems, like some people are like, man, that's kind of, are you going to stand in the mirror and do the Jack Smalley from Saturday Night Live, where you're like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. I kind of, I mean, it's kind of a funny take on that, but to an extent, that's sort of what it is. You know, so it improves your self-esteem when you can talk to yourself in a positive manner. You feel better about who you are, right? And again, it takes away that nagging stress that destroys you, you destroying you. Okay. Thought stopping. Again, when you have negative thoughts, especially those that are, like what I call ghost thoughts. And again, to me, what a ghost thought is when there's something that you always think when something happens. So this would be like, all right, so for example, you got a guy or a girl that's married, and every time they go out with their friends, and their spouse is convinced they're cheating, and it's not something that's actually happening, right? So the spouse is always like, and maybe they'll voice it, maybe they don't, but they're like, man, I bet they're going to go out and go cheat. I bet they're cheating. I bet they're cheating. And it's not happening. It's this negative ghost thought that every time they're like, hey, can I go out with my buddies? Or, hey, can I go out with the girlfriends? Or, can I, your first reaction is they're looking to get out of the house to go be with somebody else. Right. And so you've got to stop those thoughts, and especially if you've had this talk and better, so maybe you even know better, but it's like just a gut reaction to go there, right? And so you've got to have this talk with yourself to be like, nope, stop that right there. That's not what he's going to hang out with his buddies. She's going to hang out with her buddies, right? And the outcome of positive self-talk and thought stopping is learned optimism. So, you're just thinking, hey, they're going to go out, have fun. He's going to come back and be in a great mood. And, she's going to come back and be in a great mood, and I'm happy for them. And, we'll do our thing afterwards, right? We'll come back, and then we can watch our movie. We can do whatever, right? Cognitive techniques, power language. The words you use to describe your emotions will have a noticeable effect on how you feel. So again, what you say, like the way you talk, the way, like if you talk angry, you express your emotion, you talk about things a certain way, it's going to be negative, it's going to be angry, it's going to, the way you change, if you change the way, the words you use, it'll change your attitude towards somebody or something or what, the situation. Okay. Going with the flow. Again, this is the, this is I'm sure everybody's heard that prayer where, give me the wisdom to change the things that I can change, or to know the things, I'm messing it up right now. Apparently everybody knows it but me. To change the things I can change and know the things that I cannot change, and discern between the two, basically, is what it is. So, it's, you gotta, if there's something within your control to change, and if you change it, it helps out, you change it. But there's a lot of conditions in our life that we cannot change, right? So, the river's going to flow in its direction. So if you're going to get in a boat, you can either try to paddle upstream against it, or you can flow with it, right? And so if you're going to flow with it, you've just got to navigate those things going that direction. Again, we're all thrown in quarantine, so we could either accept it and make the best out of it, or we're not, right? And so, these are things that you've got to, you have to learn to do and accept those conditions, right? So Ryan Pitzinger, lifetime surfer, surveyed 107 surfers. After a 30-minute surfing session, positivity and tranquility increased significantly, while negative mood and fatigue decreased. He used his findings in his work with an ocean therapy program to help at-risk youth. I will attest to that. I don't have to go surfing for a long period of time, but there's something about getting out on a surfboard in the waves. Even on a bad day, I went out this past weekend, and it was windy. It was really choppy. Not the best conditions. It was really hard to get up on the waves and stand up, but just getting up on a couple, I only got up on a few waves. It took a long time to get out to the waves, and I was getting blown all over the place. You know, getting pummeled on 3 waves, but catching 2 waves, man, really just change, like, it just made my day, made my day good, right? And it does. There's just something about that. I don't know what it is with that either, but it does. Underlying theories and practices: conditioned response. When things happen in our environment, we're conditioned to respond in certain ways. And again, we're conditioned by our past experiences, or we model it after what we've seen from other people, right? Most experts agree that people are conditioned to a large extent. Some patterns or behaviors serve us well, and others do not serve us quite as well. And a lot of times we repeat those that serve us well, and unfortunately, sometimes we repeat the ones that didn't serve us so well, right? Good news is that if we've learned to respond in certain ways to something that happens, we can also unlearn it, right? So if you keep getting yourself into trouble by the way you're responding, you can always learn to respond differently, right? And again, the longer you've done a certain behavior, it does take, it usually is harder to break and have a different response, but it's not impossible, and it can be done, right? Choice. As conscious and aware human beings, we have the capacity to place something between the stimulus and the response, right? And this gives us control, right? So, there are certain things that are outside of your control. If it rains at 4 o'clock today, it's going to rain at 4 o'clock today. But if you had outdoor plans, you have choices, right? You can choose to be miserable, sit inside, look out the window, and hope the rain will not last, even though the meteorologist said it's going to last all night. Okay. You can choose to go outside in the rain, wear clothes that adapt you to the rain, and go do whatever outside activity you were planning on doing and doing in the rain. You can also choose to find a fun activity to do indoors, or you can choose to drive somewhere to, either participate outdoors or participate indoors in something that, again, is fun. You have a choice, okay? And the same thing, you have a choice in the way you react to things, right? And it puts you in control of how that situation will affect you. Whenever we are upset, angry, bored, nervous, anxious, embarrassed, shy, or experience any other emotion, it stems from our thoughts, not the event that's happening, right? You know, so for example, I've got little kids, and right now especially my youngest little kid, he has no embarrassment about running through the house naked. I mean, just Absolutely none. You know, even if people like somebody walks in our house, he doesn't think twice about it, right? Just not there. Now, my older kids have been conditioned as well as, you know, I've been conditioned that, you know, somebody walks in the house and I'm running through the house naked for whatever reason. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be shy about it. I'm going to want to cover up quickly, right? And again, it's something that, you know, it stems from my thoughts of being told, like, you know, it's inappropriate for you to be naked in front of other folks. You need to not have that happen, right? So again, you can see where I've been conditioned and been taught that, right? Where he has not. Um, and again, it's the same thing with everything else. You know, we're conditioned to be upset over certain things. We're conditioned to be angry over certain things. You know, being bored, right? And how we react, you know, and our thoughts, you know. So again, you know, somebody, you know, says something to you that makes you angry, right? You can change, you can choose to have different thoughts and different thought pattern and not be angry about what they just said to you. You know, you can choose to ignore them. You can choose to not value what they have to say about you that makes you angry, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can choose in that. Levels of responding, we can categorize how people respond to uncontrollable events in two broad categories: effective and ineffective. So effective would be leads to feelings associated with relaxation, and those that are associated with stress, right? So again, something comes up, you think about it, you come up with a solution to combat whatever this event is, or remedy this event, or get through this event, however it is. You feel relaxed because you're in control of you and what's going to happen. Ineffective is you do things to exacerbate the stress, you know, like the stress that you feel over the stressor, and it doesn't help. It just makes you feel worse, right? Ineffective methods of response: attachment or rightness, clutching emotionally to ideas, concepts, or situation, and getting disappointed when our expectations aren't met. You know, a lot of times people have way too high of expectations of things. You know, it's like when somebody asked me first time I went to Legoland, they're like, "How was it?" I'm like, "Oh, it was really fun." They're like, "Oh, cool." They're like, "So, you know, compared to Disneyland or Disney World," I'm like, "Well, let me put it this way: don't compare it to Disney World. If you go in there thinking Legoland's going to be like Disney World or it's going to be up to that type of level, you will be disappointed. Now, if you expect it to be better than, you know, like a local carnival or something along those lines, or some, you know, like low grade theme park you've been to in like some little states, you know, like things that we dealt with in New Mexico, you know, we don't have, you know, we've got one little place in Albuquerque that's not hardly anything at all. Man, it's amazing, you know. So again, you know, you if you hold the idea of this is what it is, these are the type of rides, this is the aesthetic look of the place for, you know, again, and this is what your expectations are, then you're going to have a good time, right? If you have any distortions there, it's going to mess you up. Judgment, criticism, or blaming, putting a label on something and then trying to make the label the reality, right? So, you know, people get in arguments, you know, you see things differently, but then you try to label them as they're the, you know, they're the bad guys, you're the good guys, right? They're the, you know, you're the sheriff and they're the robbers, you know, and like kids games type of thing. And that's just how it is. You know, it doesn't help, right? And you can't, you know, you label somebody or something, doesn't actually make it that way. Okay, it just makes it where you see it that way. Resistance, complaining, wishing things were different than they are. You know, if things change, great, but wishing ain't gonna make it happen, right? I want a better job. Okay, how do you get a better job? Well, if you know, if there's a job you want and it requires a certain amount of education, then you go get that education. You know, if you have the education and you're just at one place that's not working out for you, well, you apply to new places. There's things that you do. You don't wish it to change. You got to make it change. All right. Here's a Taoist perspective on resistance. A man was so disturbed by the sight of his own shadow and so displeased with his own footsteps that he determined to get rid of both. He tried to run away from them. He failed to realize that if he merely stepped into the shade, his shadow would vanish. And if he sat down and stayed still, there would be no more footsteps. Again, this is getting into, you know, big philosophical, like, ooh, you know, yes and no. You know, it's just solving the situation, right? You know, if you know that a shadow is cast when there's light, you get out of the light. If you don't want to hear your footsteps, quit stepping, right? You know, solve the problem. Effective methods of response. Observation. Notice what's going on. That's the big thing, is a lot of times people react and they don't take time to inventory the situation. You know, discovery, observe and seek to understand. You know, man, I think this is the biggest problem in our society right now. I mean, you can look at this when we look at politics. You can look at this when you look at all the different sides. You know, with the stuff going on with Black Lives Matter. I mean, you name it. You can look at it in diet culture. You can look at it with people that, you know, like are, you know, trying to lose weight, and then you got the people from the health at every size that are telling them they're wrong for thinking that way. All these things, nobody's looking at why people on the other side see the world the way they do. They are not observing and seeking to understand their point, right? They just want to yell at them and tell them they're wrong, and that they are, and that they personally are right. And it doesn't help. I mean, we just have people always butting heads, and we never see any middle ground. You know, we wonder why a lot of times in the government, they're like, why don't they get things done? You've got two groups of folks that are so set on making their political party right that they don't care about doing the right thing, right? They just want to prove their points. You know, like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. We got to further the political party this way or further political party this way, rather than like, hey, you know what? This thing would actually be a good idea. And if we can all work together to do it, this would make the world a better place, right? I mean, it's crazy. They don't observe and seek to understand. You know, well, why do you think that way? You know, what's led you to think that? You know, and again, understanding doesn't mean you're always going to like be on somebody's side after that. It's not. You know, I think people are always worried it's going to change their mind, which isn't always true. But sometimes we find middle grounds. You know, and again, you may have people that at the end of the day, one person's like, well, I still really feel that this is right, and the other person's like, yeah, I feel that this is right. But again, with you know, they don't hate each other, which that's progress. Or they're like, you know, but these are some things where it was very black and white to me. Now I see a lot more gray on it. And this other person, yeah, I see more gray there too. And they can work together to seek more understanding or create some solutions to some problems. All right. Allowance and acceptance, emotionally embrace the way things are. You know, uh, there are things you can change, and there are things that you can't. And again, if you can't change something, you can be angry about it, or you can just accept it and just be like, this is how this is. Gratitude, be thankful for the opportunity to experience the moment, right? You know, sometimes, you know, it may not be the greatest moment. Maybe it's a hard moment. You know, there's a difference between happiness and joy. Joy is being grateful no matter what your situation, right? And you know, and viewing things maybe as a learning opportunity or a growing opportunity, even when it's tough. Rational emotive behavior therapy. You're responsible for your own emotions and actions. Your harmful emotions and dysfunctional behaviors are the product of your own irrational thinking, right? You make it bigger than it is. You get mad. You're the one that's screaming and yelling or throwing punches when it didn't need to come to that, right? And so again, you're responsible for that. You can learn more realistic views and with practice make them a part of you. So again, let's go back to the example of the teenager who is like, my boyfriend or my girlfriend broke up with me. It's the end of the world. They're crying and screaming and losing it because they think it's the end of the world, but they can learn to be like, you know what? That's just one guy. That's just one girl. They got it wrong, or we just weren't right for each other. They change, you know, they practice, they make it more realistic. Like, look, just because they left is not the end of the world for me. Okay. There will be other relationships. There'll be, you know, they can learn to adapt. You'll experience a deeper acceptance of yourself and greater satisfaction of life by developing reality-based perspectives than having distorted perspectives and a black or white, right or wrong perspective of how the world should work. Two types of problems. Practical problems relate to things that result in feelings of being treated unfairly by others or being in undesirable situations. And emotional problems caused by emotional reactions to the practical problems. So somebody calls you stupid or ugly or fat or skinny, right? This is the practical problem, okay? They called you something you did not want to be called. You were treated unfairly. Your emotion can be a problem, right? So how you react to it, hey, you're fat, hey, you're stupid, you know, that doesn't help, right? So you react emotionally, you get angry and you call them something, right? Instead of being like, hey, well, why, you know, why is that any of your concern if I am fat or if I'm too fat or too skinny, right? Why, you know, I mean, why do you even have to say that? You know, let's have a talk about this, you know. Why do you see it that way? One, and then let me explain to you how that feels to you. You know, you know, I don't really appreciate that. Let's, you know, what you want out of this, okay? So how do you control and minimize emotional suffering? Take responsibility for your emotional upsets and distress. Again, you know, a lot of times when somebody says something or does something to you to upset you, you know, you can look at it as like, I don't want to give them the power and the satisfaction of me like getting mad or sad or angry. You know, like take that control. That's your control. Be like, you want to say that's fine, doesn't bother me. Why? Because you're not that important to me for that to bother me, right? You don't let them have the control over you, right? So you take responsibility and say, you know what? I'm going to go on with my day and have a good day, even though you said that. You know, you take care. I'll see you later, right? Determine the reality of your musts. There are certain things in your life that are must, but again, a lot of times we have too many musts. You know, it's like one of those things that um, you know, people try to minimalize in their life, right? That's what this is, an area you really should minimalize. What are the absolute musts that you should have? Okay. People don't need 50 musts in their life. You know, you just need a few, right? And as long as you have a few musts, everything else can just roll off your back. Okay. Or you can roll with the punches, or you can go with the flow, however you want to look at that. Okay. The ABCDE technique. So again, you got the activating event. So this is whatever the stressor is. Belief system. So identify your rational thinking versus your rational thinking that could typically happen during this. So, okay, this is making me feel crazy. Is this rational or not rational, right? What you know, again, you know, you're texting somebody, all of a sudden they don't text back. Your irrational thing is they're mad at me. They're angry at what I wrote. Did I say something? Did I do something? The rational thinking would be they put their phone down and are tending to something else, right? Consequences. Mentally, you can bounce around in your head. What did you do? What did you say? How did you say it? Did you hurt their feelings? Did you make them mad? Did you, physically you feel ill because, your stomach's now in knots because you're worried that you ruined a friendship or relationship of some sort, right? And then you sit there in your behavior, right? So now you start texting back, fast and furious, and now you've made something that wasn't a situation. She's like, why didn't you text me? Do you hate me doing on that? Now you've caused something, right? Because of your behavior. Or you did it the right way. You're like, mentally, you're like, okay, they probably just put down their phone, or they've got kids, they're probably tending to their kids. Take a deep breath, no big deal. You feel better physically. And again, you're just like, hey, I'll just wait for them to text back, right? You don't exacerbate something or make a problem, that wasn't a problem. D, dispute irrational beliefs. So tell yourself, they don't hate me. All I did was ask them if they wanted, to hang out today. Why would somebody be mad about that, right? That's an irrational thought. And effect, change the consequences, right? So again, maybe in the past you used to be somebody that texts back and be like, well, why didn't you text me? What's going on? I'm so, you change that over time where you're just like, you know what, I'll let it be. I'll let them text me when they text me, okay? So in conclusion, how we think matters, managing our self-talk, have positive self-talk, stop negative thoughts when they occur. Again, it's one of those things that as they come in, that you'll get quicker at doing it, which makes it a lot better. And going with the flow helps us. You're not in control of this world. You're not in control of your environment. You have little control over those things, if any control at all. So learn to adapt, be adaptable. Always be adaptable. Always be adaptable, right? And it helps prevent the stress response from activating, right? Again, we got our own labs, so don't worry about these, right? That is it for chapter 6. If you have any questions, you guys just let me know and we'll do that. I'm going to get out of this. And I will go to stop recording as soon as it lets me do that. All right, we'll do chapter 7 next time.